Okay, but if there's a dictionary, like a picture dictionary with the word prolific, you're gonna go like, people always say like, oh, you have 16 books out. And I'm like, I'm a pussy next to Ken.
Well, it's weird, man. It's weird the way we look at ourselves, I think, sometimes because and it maybe goes along with that we're our own worst critics, but I look at myself and I see that I don't consider myself successful at these things. And then as a lot of times in order for me to get any perspective, I'll have to talk to someone else on it and they'll be like, you do like all this different stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do. Like, I just didn't realize how much it was, because for me, I just can't not be doing it.
There's a chip, and you always have to be doing something. I can relate to that to a certain degree. The things that this year is an odd duck of a year
Right.
because
Absolutely.
people go like, oh, you're probably finishing a bunch of novels, and I'm like, no, I've had to start new projects just to get motivated because
Right.
for X or Y reason, there's there's some inertia tagged onto certain projects that I don't know why I can't shake off, and I'm just trying to generate momentum. And I'm always doing a lot of stuff. I'm always writing on the blog. I'm always doing creative stuff on social media just to have fun with people and get people to crack a smile. But in terms of like my major projects, I've had to do like a hard pivot just to keep momentum going and keep doing stuff, because when I'm doing stuff, I'm happy and I'm
Right.
in a better headspace. When there's this existential lull, that's when bad things happens. And in terms to in regards to success, the definition of success changes from person to person. For me, people say, "Oh, you made it," and I'm like, "I haven't made it because this is not sustainable." I
Right.
can't pay the rent and food with my writing.
Right.
I really wish I would, and I'm pushing for that every day. There's stuff that I could do better, but what I'm exactly, I'm not exactly sure. So who knows?
Right. And that's kind of the place we find ourselves in, is that we have to use one of the parlances of our times, we have a hole to fill. And the way to fill it, the only way that I've found to fill it, is by making something. And it doesn't necessarily matter what I'm making. It could be a movie, it could be a story, it could be a comic, it could be a table. But as long as my hands and my brain are working together to make something, then I'm happy. And maybe that's what success is just finding that place you can be where you're fulfilled. Like, yeah, no, I don't pay my rent with any of these things. Like, I have a day job. I might always have a day job. You know what I mean? But like,
We
if
can
I can
hope.
live
We
my
can
life
hope
in
otherwise.
happiness, like doing this thing, then I think that's maybe I am successful then by those terms.
Mugshot.
All right, so JD, tell me about yourself and tell me what you do.
Okay, first off, this is my mugshot. Second off, I'm an indie author from Puerto Rico who currently lives in Atlanta because I wanted to see the real life season premiere of The Walking Dead. Apparently, because what the hell, 2020, right?
Yeah, totally.
Indie author. I write poetry. I write novels. I do have a special concept called Blank Comics, which is something a little different. A lot of people say it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. It's got a good heart behind it, but it hasn't taken off yet. Also write nonfiction, also make music. Seriously thinking about buying the equipment to record it and see even if a rough demo can make it on Bandcamp before the year's over, because why the hell not? How about you?
Cool, man. So yeah, I'm just artist, filmmaker, writer. Pretty much anything there is to do. I've dabbled in it or explored it a lot. I have a couple films, feature films up on Amazon and the Fantasy Network. I have a comic that I've written and drawn that I am submitting to publishers now. Before I explore the route of self-publishing, I just completed a 450-page fantasy novel that I'm also going to go through and do some editing on before I explore publishing options for that. And yeah, so I mean, pretty much, I think for me, it all kind of starts with writing and drawing, but then it explodes into movies and other areas as well. So art is valuable because it's, you know, our innermost, you know, thoughts and musings that we're just pulling out of ourselves and presenting it out there for other people to say, look at this. You're not the only one that feels this way. We all kind of have these feelings. We're all together. But if you don't have that grind to contrast it against, like, I mean, if you're just like a person who lives in like wealth and luxury and you've never had to work a day in your life or struggle at all, is your art like, what is your art interesting to anyone that has had to live that struggle?
Exactly. At least for me, I wonder, I really wish I could find out if I didn't have to do the grind and I had a more chill existence. I wonder if I could still tap into stuff, because a lot is not necessarily reactionary. It's not like I'm taking my anger. I have done projects, you know, talking about, you know, processes and stuff of the day job and stuff like that, and nuances. But I'm dealing with the reality, and I want to escape reality. So I escape to this.
Right.
And this is completely divorced and separated from this. That's why I'm happy here. But if I didn't have this, which prompted that need to escape, I always wonder how prolific I could be if I had all the time and all the resources and all the means that we're always bitching about, because it's easy to bitch about. It's like, if I had more time.
Right.
And I just think, you know, right now I do wish I had more time and more energy, because you know, I'm very fortunate that I've been able to keep my job, but it's been a grind of a year. It's been really intense. And that's why I've had to do the shifts to different new projects just to, you know, pump new life into my creativity. But just energy and time has been in demand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe as creative people, we fall into this sort of trap during this Corona, you know, and quarantine situation, where we feel like if we didn't have to go to work and we didn't have to do our day job, that we somehow are obligated to be more prolific because we have all day. And it's like, I know me, for example, when I was down out of work for a while, I just played a shit ton of video games. And
I've been playing a shit ton of video games.
Right, because it's not like this is not an ideal circumstance where we just like we're given a month off. This is you know, a global pandemic. Everybody's got this anxiety in the back of their head about, you know, where this virus is going and what's going to happen with our country, like
with the world.
Right.
My wife works.
So I think you can't be too hard on yourself if you haven't been super prolific during this time.
I think there's a wide variety of assholes trying to cash in on that fear and that worry of people that they're not creating it. It's like, this is the time that you have to be prolific. So get my program and these 10 steps and blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, seriously, go screw yourself. Yeah. It's a time to be kind to other people and yourself. And
absolutely,
that's also in shortage. Everyone's kicking
that's always in shortage.
But even this year, it's really drastically in shortage, and I think people are being way too good at beating themselves up over stuff. Yeah. You know, I could be beating myself up because I haven't finished book 3, but I recognize the situation for what it is. It's a very, you know, book 3 of the Human Cycle is very personal. It's very emotionally intense. I'm very emotionally involved and attached to that project, and I don't want to force it. I have the ideas, I have the outline, but it's something that has to flow. Right. I've tried to force my writing and other stuff, and it doesn't work because I read it and I go like, that kind of sucks. And it's not that you're suffering or sad or angry and you turn to writing. That's very different, because the second book, those last 10 chapters are extremely cathartic. I went through a really, really rough patch when I was writing that, and it was healing. But I didn't force it. And there's a lot of people saying, you got to force it. You got to do it every day because, you got to create a habit in 21 days. And it's like, dude, right now it's survival, and survival has taken on a whole new meaning, because it's not just wash your hands and use a face mask. It's do something that'll get you that cookie to be happy and not be miserable, and give your best and keep on going. And, It's like when you're surfing. There's a big set coming. You're in the inside and you're screwed. You got to calm down. You got to breathe. Maybe you have to be creative and you have to think of a sunshiny place that's not, getting detonated by waves. And eventually it'll pass, but we don't know how many waves are in that set. So
Right.
that's at least my reaction to the year and to the people. Oh, now's when you got to be prolific.
Right. That's, well, like you said, I think first and foremost, man, you got to be kind to yourself and by, naturally to other people, because, how you treat other people is essentially how you're treating yourself, really. And we, I think, have a tendency to not be kind to ourselves. We have a tendency to be too harsh on ourselves, and forgive yourself. If you didn't fucking publish, 3 novels in Corona lockdown quarantine, I mean, forgive yourself.
And again, and then there's people who have these get rich quick creative schemes, pyramid and stuff like that. And you know what? Maybe it works for some people. It doesn't work for me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. And for me, I'm just trying to be as I'm always very transparent in terms of how I'm doing, how my creative process is doing. And when people go like, "Oh, how's this book coming along?" I go like, "I'm working on it, but it's not flowing." And I owe it to myself and to pretty much everyone involved in the creative process, from the writer until the reader, to do something that makes me happy. And if it doesn't make me happy or it's not clicking, why the hell force it? And again, that's why I'm also doing different things.
Right.
Hard pivot. I started a new poetry collection, and it flourished for like 2.5 weeks, and then I got slammed with work, and it's like right now I'm on standstill, and I'm like, okay, have we gotten past that, and can I take this back up again? Because I really want to get it done, and I was just getting so much momentum and having so much fun, and I think it shows having fun, and I think that right now some people need to read something that's fun.
Yeah.
Not everyone. Some people need something cathartic. Some people might need to read your pain or watch something that's like your pain, your creativity, or your joy, just so that they can release it. For me in March, when I listened to Pearl Jam's new album, man, I hadn't cried. And I listened to that album and I was able to release so much tension. I knew that I had tension. I just didn't know how much, but it's like 7 a.m. and you're listening to an album like a teenager in a corner, like, yeah, this is special. So what projects have you been working on? Because you got a variety of stuff. So what has been your happy?
So in the winter, this last winter, or last fall and this winter, we my team and I shot a proof of concept for a feature-length mockumentary called Enter the Mind Dungeon. And
okay, for those of us not to know, what is a proof of?
Okay, so a proof of concept is essentially, rather than going out and shooting an entire movie, because I don't have the money to pay everyone to do that, what we're doing is everybody, cast and crew, are volunteering to shoot basically a short film that is a snippet or snippets from the feature film. And then we're going to take that's called our proof of concept. And we're going to take that out and use that to crowdfund and to find investors to say, hey, this is basically a sample of what our movie is going to be. We can make the rest of this movie, but we need financial assistance to do so.
Which one of these is a D4?
It's the one that's shaped like a caltrop.
It's important to remember that these are normal people like you and I. They're suffering from a very real affliction. These are not monsters.
You take 33 damage.
You would not find them in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes.
I shapeshift into a dire octopus.
Look, I have to take this, please.
Can you even see my unicorn from there?
My throwing hammer gets a +2 against fairies.
I throw 6 daggers.
Wu-Tang, pa!
It's an escape, a release, a rush. The rush I get when I get to drive my mace into a kobold's stupid little skull, you know? I don't think any of us have a problem, necessarily. Except maybe Calliope.
I'm a Capricorn. Duh. Would anybody care for some elven wine?
This condition has been dubbed AODDS, or Adult Onset Dungeons and Dragons Syndrome.
Has Dungeons and Dragons affected your career?
It hasn't. Still a plumber. Level 1.
AODDS strikes without mercy, leaving tragic victims straining to maintain some semblance of normal life, while trapped in the dungeon of their own minds.
And then, out of the shadows of the alleyway creeps that same dog you saw from before.
Can I roll to see if he's a good boy?
You don't have to roll. He is a good boy.
A Dr. Leo Flynn has been studying the syndrome for the past 15 years. And despite losing his funding several times within that period, he continues to investigate.
Beholder. Dwarf Berserker. Bag of holding. Dwarf Berserker. Banana split. Oh. Displacer Beast. Dwarf Berserker.
My family just isn't as rewarding as Dungeons and Dragons.
But you love them, right?
Who?
Your family.
Yeah, they're okay.
I'm a single mom, 3 kids, and I work 2 jobs just to make ends meet, which is all this. But Gwendolyn, my dark elf rogue, she doesn't have any kids. Does anyone mind if I share my erotic interracial fan fiction? It's about Gwendolyn, Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson.
Yes, I might. No, just stop.
Why? Because Wilson is black and Rogers is white.
No, because it's 2 dudes.
No, it wasn't.
It's interracial because Rogers is a human, Wilson is a halfling, and Gwendolyn is a drow. So it's called 50 Shades of Greyhawk. One day, a tall, handsome ranger with a magnificent mustache rode out of the north. His name was Aaron of the Green Bay.
And we had shot all of our proof of concept material and we were done shooting it in January. We were going to put the proof of concept film together. And then in March and April, we were going to crowdfund and we were going to be shooting our feature film in July and August and September. And I was already booking, everybody had weekends, we're getting locked on our calendars. I was booking venues and we were getting ready to start raising the money to shoot this film this summer. And as you know, things happened and we ended up not shooting a movie this summer because circumstances. So yeah, in the meantime, I've been kind of filling the void with, like I said, I finally finished that fantasy novel that I've been working on for longer than I care to admit.
Okay, you said page count. What's the word count?
I don't know the word count offhand.
Guesstimate.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I can.
Over 100K, over 150K.
In there,
comparable to Brandon Sanderson and comparable to The Hobbit.
Probably closer to Sanderson.
So okay, so it's been therapeutic and cathartic and prolific. That's cool.
Absolutely. So the whole thing is essentially me dealing with my own mortality.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's
and it's a fantasy.
It is a fantasy. Yeah, it's essentially, it follows 2 characters. It's broken into 2 parts. The first part is about the first character, who is a celebration of youth and life and vigor and vitality. And the second half of the book, the second character is concerned with decaying and aging and dying and oblivion and darkness and whatnot. And the 2 characters sort of become intertwined and are at war with each other. And essentially, like in a nutshell, the story in this world, reincarnation is a thing. And these 2 characters have essentially stepped outside of that cycle. And because they are not participating in that cycle, the cycle itself is breaking down and threatens to come unraveled if these 2 characters don't take their place in the cycle.
Okay.
So that's kind of the premise of it.
Hey, well, that's cool. And
Yeah, it is very cathartic.
are you going to shop it around or release it independently?
So the first thing I need to do is do some major editing, because I've gone back through. I started writing this so long ago that some of the earlier stuff, as I've read back through it now that I've finished, is really rough, and absolutely I think needs to be just flat out rewritten. You fall into a trap. I don't know if you deal with this, but if I get too stuck in like revising mode, I'll just be revising forever and ever. And I don't want to fall into that trap. At some point, I need to like finish this thing and walk away from it and do something else.
Sometimes you just got to pull the trigger and go for it. I know people who the last 5 years have worked on the same manuscript for NaNoWriMo, and I'm like, not only is that torture, you're saving the torture for 1 month of the year,
right?
And beyond that, it's a lull of 11 months. And
right.
It's like, man, just release it. What's the worst that's going to happen? That people go, oh, it could have been better. Is that the worst? Because oftentimes people will hit that point of, okay, this could have been better, but it's not bad. And that's not bad. Right. And then there's other people that just churn out stuff and you go like, man, this was, sometimes you see a toy that is wonderful and then you see something that's made in Taiwan that is the knockoff. I know some people who are great at doing knockoffs, but their joy, I don't think so much crafting, it's selling. And I've seen them in action and you got to see it. And it's like, okay, that's their joy.
Right.
I saw a guy killing it at a con. He was killing it. And I read one of his books and I was like, it's okay. But in terms of salesmanship and whatnot and connecting to the reader in that moment, the guy's absolutely brilliant.
Right.
I just didn't love his book. Maybe someone will, but the thing is that, the premise was so out there, and then I read the book and the book is like so morose, and I go like, I look at the cover, I read the blurb, and then I read the book and I go like, there's this huge disconnect. But that's me because I'm a nitpicker with certain things. With other things, I'm more lenient, but with that, I go like, man, I thought I was going to laugh and I didn't laugh once. And you had a premise with sex toys. There should have been laughter there somewhere, or at the very least joy.
Right. Should have been some levity there for sure.
No, not even pleasure. I was like, dude, sex toys, none of the above. Come on. Right.
Yeah. That's comedy goldmine. That's why you go to sex toys, right? It's comedy.
I don't know. Try to imagine if Fozzie, whipped out the rubber chicken and then started to play this depressing violin song on it. It would still be
funny for a moment. I think that would play for a laugh.
Yeah, it would be a gag, but it would get old fast.
Yeah, totally. I think you brought up some important points there about like when you're essentially polishing or editing something. And it doesn't matter. It could be a movie. It could be a manuscript. It could be a poem. It could be a piece of clay that you're carving or molding. You can refine it forever, because there's a certain place in your head where you could be like, this is never going to be perfect, but you devote yourself to making it perfect forever, and you never step away from it. Versus people who are just like mold something quickly and they're like, okay, there it is, it's done. So there's a balance, right? Somewhere in between there's where we have to say, this is now good enough. I am now okay with releasing this, because you could spend your entire life working on one thing. And like you said, I know several people who just churn out books and they're not great. They're not even really good. Like,
I don't like giving out a bad review, but I'm not going to give a good review because I like someone. That's never been me. That's never going to be me. But in terms of time, certain things take, some time. In terms of a novel, I think that just takes more time. Not a massive amount of time. It doesn't need to take a decade, but it requires its time for you to do it, digest it, edit it, let it go, then read it again and go like, man, I think I could have done this better. With a poem, for me, that process is more like, I want to trap lightning in a bottle. So it's probably I'm going to capture it. I'm going to let it go for a bit. And then when I transcribe it, I might tweak something here or there. But very rarely, if it's a poem that I dedicate a lot of time to, it's because it merits that. But I can't go Peter Gabriel on every single poem, because if not, I wouldn't, I love Peter Gabriel, but it's like, well, this song took me 7 years. And I'm like,
Right.
that's his process, though, and I think his success and the quality of his content, justifies it. But people get enamored with this. Oh, it took so much year and so much time, or it has so many amount of words. And I see people like dropping like, yeah, I got 125,000 words, son. And I go like, that doesn't mean dick. Is it a good story?
Right.
There could be a punk song that's less than 2 minutes long and it's perfect. And there can be a Yes song that's 32 minutes long and it's also perfect. And it's different types of perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there are some people that spend 10 years on a piece, and then when they release it, it's it's this amazing thing. Like Terrence Malick, I think, comes to mind with his films. He's been making films since the 70s, and I think he's made 4, maybe 5. And they're beautiful, and they're like poignant, and they're touching. But I mean, like, that's not the road I want to go down. I don't want to go down the road where I make only 4 or 5 pieces of art in the duration of my life. Even if those pieces are close to perfect, I'd rather make 100 that are mediocre, just because for me, like we talked about earlier, doing it is what brings me pleasure.
But maybe what brings them pleasure, and that's the other thing. A lot of people follow 10 steps to be successful, or 10 steps to do stuff. It's like you have to be very selective with what works for you. And a lot of people, and this is a piece of advice that I give often because people forget it easily. You got to find your own method. You got to find what works for you, and what brings out the best in you and makes you happiest. If you achieve all those things, I'm not saying a ton of people, but someone is going to read it and connect.
Right.
And when you stop impressing people, trying to impress people and trying to imitate or be the next whatever, you can get a step up and a step up and a step up. Hey, teach your own.
Can you tell me, so you've, how many novels have you published?
No, I have not published an album.
I'm sorry, novels.
Novels. I have 2 novels in the human cycle. I have 1 middle grade novel called Given to Fly. I have 2, and those are the novels that I have.
Okay.
I have 2 nonfiction books. I have 6 poetry collections, 5 in English, 1 in Spanish, and I have 1 that's a collection of all the poetry collections in English, so that it's for a couple purposes. First off, so that I don't drown in books in my booth. Second off, so it's more accessible to people. I have that, and I have a middle grade short story collection. And I also have a bilingual collection with poetry, essays, and short stories. And, again, what makes me happy, what makes me productive, and whatnot. I have that, plus the 2 blank comics, which is the concept I did as a tribute to my grandmother. I have one here. I'll show you. Comic. When you have variant covers that they're blank?
Right.
Well, I did that, but with a comic book.
Okay, nice.
I do the grids.
So it's like all the words and the stories there.
Everything's there, and all you have to do is draw it. The purpose for that is threefold. First off, I was at the Puerto Rico Comic Con. They were doing a talent scouting for DC Comics, I believe. Like 200 hopefuls applied. Only they chose like 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of kids that were bummed out, and I was like, "No, man, you got to keep on it." And a lot of people were just like, bummed out. And I just didn't want to, I wanted to do something. So rather than just, hey, buddy, do it. Basically, I wrote the entire thing. It's each of those books has 3 volumes inside. All the backstory, it has the story, has the dialogue, has everything. It just needs for someone to draw it. Another purpose was basically, if you need something for your portfolio, draw that, put it, say that you collaborated with an indie author, have at it, get a job. That's part of my intention. The other intention is that if I ask you to draw it and I ask other artists to draw it, if I ask people to draw a car and I give like a vague description, you're going to get 10 different cars. And it's also to promote the tolerance of points of view a bit more, which I think is also very lacking these days.
I think you brought up something that was very important when you were talking about all the kids that were there that applied for the DC thing, and then only 2 were selected. So many of them were bummed out because they're rejected. And that first brush with rejection is something that a lot of us have to go through. And I think it's like, what do you call it? I can't remember the word for it, but it's kind of like a threshold that keeps certain people out, because a lot of us are told throughout our educations that whether it's by our parents or by someone who's enamored with what we're doing, that what we're doing is amazing and great. And then we all of a sudden, when we reach the submission process of, applying to Marvel or DC, which I've done both of those and been rejected from both of those, we hit these walls and we're like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. And it kind of crushes us and breaks our heart. And there's I think a significant percentage of the people at that point that just stop trying and just go a different direction with their life. They're like, well, I guess this wasn't meant to be. And it's like, that's a barrier to entry, that it's like, you got to know, if you want to do this, you can't give up there.
Right.
You got to keep trying.
You got to be stubborn for the good stuff.
Right. Absolutely.
And again, I'm always very transparent. I tell people, this isn't easy. This isn't, you're not going to get rich unless you get lucky, and you might get lucky. And I always tell people, you might get lucky. So go for it. Because a woman was writing a fan fiction of Twilight on her way to work in her commute, doing it on her phone. And that became 50 Shades of Grey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she's done pretty well for herself. I'm not saying that her work is great.
Right.
I'm not saying that I would even read it. I'm saying she had success.
Right. Absolutely. And I remember having similar thoughts when I first read Harry Potter. And I read, so after the first Harry Potter movie came out, I was like, I'm gonna read these books, because like none of this seems frighteningly original to me. And so I went and I read the Harry Potter books, and I'm like, they were far from the best fantasy that I'd ever read. I don't even think the Harry Potter books are in my top 10, but it's this global phenomenon. It's, Harry Potter is as big as Lord of the Rings ever was.
Right. It's bigger because it has its own amusement park.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. But when I was reading it, I never felt that it was really all that good. And I mean, granted, probably I was a man in my 30s when I was reading it, rather than the market for those books, which was teenagers, really.
But I started reading them when I was 20. And the thing is that they arrived at a point, it's all about timing.
Right.
I read Percy Jackson, and I felt old as hell. I just felt old while reading it. When I read Harry Potter, something clicked, because it's the type of fantasy that does connect with me. And honestly, I just needed some magic in my life at that point. And that's the series that I just landed on. And it connected with a lot of things. And even if right now it's taboo to say that you enjoy Harry Potter, for valid reasons or whatnot. And that's a different conversation. But the work, Harry Potter per se, I agree that it's not necessarily original, but it does have its own charm, that for some reason, it doesn't have to be the most original for it to work.
Right.
Not everyone can be Tolkien. That guy was, but then again, that guy got tenure so that he could spend hours upon hours in the library developing a new elf language. Right.
And it's like, we're all taking pieces from other things that we've seen and we've learned, like everything has kind of a language. And we're taking things that are in these languages, and sometimes we pull things from other languages, and we put them together in different juxtapositions. And every once in a while, someone hits on a juxtaposition of things that just hits it with people. It just resonates with people.
In terms of drawing and writing, is there anyone that you can fall into flow state quicker?
I think I fall into flow state. Oh, that's tricky.
It depends on the day.
Right. Okay. So here's how I would say it. Here's how I would describe it. The flow state I enter with writing is not as easy to access, but it's deeper than the flow state I enter with drawing. The flow state I enter with drawing is maybe a little shallower, but it lasts longer. Like I can draw all day, and like I'll get up in the morning, start drawing, and the next thing I know, the sun's going down, and I'm like, wow, I've spent all day drawing. And like, I didn't even realize it, but I don't feel like I wasted my time, because I was enjoying myself. And it was basically just one moment that lasted all day.
Yeah.
But it's never as deep or as magic as it is when I'm writing. But the writing seems to be more sporadic.
Yeah. I think it also varies with me. I do vary the medium in which I'm writing in, depending on the genre that I'm writing. Right. If I'm writing poetry, this latest project, I'm doing it on computer. And I normally say that I write poetry on paper with a pencil. These are my tools for poetry. These, so that I can do stuff like that. And for this project, I'm doing it entirely on the computer. And I'm like, when you say that you have a TBR and you're gonna read these 4 books, and you don't read any of those 4 books, it's the same thing. In terms of my creative process, and a lot of people ask me about my creative process, and I say it depends on the project.
Right. Totally.
And I think people, they need to find that magic formula. And to achieve this, I have to do these 5 steps. And I'm like, for me, every time those steps change, and I don't have fear of that. And I don't think it's a bad thing either. I think it's going to help me produce something that is different enough for people to be interested in. But since it's the same dude doing it, and I'm pretty clear on how I enjoy to write, that they'll go like, oh, that's still JD. And that's, for me, the perfect example of what I want to do with pretty much everything I create is David Bowie. David Bowie could play metal, jazz, a big show tune, but it will always sound like David Bowie. And for me, that is huge. Now, in terms of mediums, the magical thing about comics is that you can have a comic strip and really make a point that drives home something, and it takes 4 panels, if that.
Right.
And you can do like an entire graphic novel and just expand on that, or just give it another spin. And again, it's wonderful art. I grew up reading comics. Actually, people go like, what did you prefer, DC or Marvel? And I would always go Jademan, and everyone's like, what the hell's Jademan? And I'm like, manhwa kung fu comics. Those, my base, my storytelling base is highly influenced by Hong Kong comics, which were extremely violent, but creative, and they didn't pull punches. And I learned at a very young age that not all characters are going to make it. And in terms of the blood sword, if you want really good storytelling, and storytelling that will make you cry, because that's your favorite, you're screwed. And not like George R.R. Martin, cruel. It's going to make sense within the story. We both dabble in music, and we both have reservations about how much to pursue that art. What's your inner critic, or what's your internal process about music, and why have you not pulled a bigger trigger, or why have you not gone, full blast with that?
So music was obviously always been a huge part of my life. I think music is central to being human, because it's one of the earliest forms of communication that's been with us since prehistory. So it resonates somewhere deep inside of us. And I was in a couple of bands when I was in my younger years. And I guess essentially what happened is, as I got older, the amount of hours I felt that I had to devote to the things that I wanted to pursue kept shrinking. So like, I had all these different interests. I wanted to make movies. I wanted to make comics. I wanted to write books. I wanted to make music. And I was like, I need to let go of one of these. And so music was the one that I let go of. But I kept my guitar. I sold my bass. But it was only within the last month that I picked my guitar back up for the first time in like 10 years. And so right now my physical conditioning is sort of the biggest barrier between me and fully enjoying myself with that, because I'm still, reforming my calluses to the point where I can play without pain. But I always found, even when I was actively engaged in music, that I just don't think I'm particularly good at songwriting.
Interesting.
And I love like playing and singing like Tom Petty. I'll play and sing Tom Petty songs all day, and it's just like heaven for me. I don't think I'm that good at writing music.
Being honest, I think I'm okay. I don't think I'm spectacular, but I think that's just something from my entire life that I've always have to fight against. When you talk to people, and then people surprise me with really kind comments about my writing and about interactions that we have at a convention and whatnot, and even my music. But when you see that something kind of sucky gets viral, and then you put a lot of love and effort into something, and it gets like 80 views, which is still a lot. You go like, well, maybe I shouldn't pursue this full on, or maybe that's what feeds into those reservations and hesitation. For me, I also have to get in the headspace where I feel comfortable doing it, because it's something very personal. It's me opening up and being very insecure. Every time I record a song and I share it, people have no fucking idea how many barriers I'm going, like, just push past it and share it, because, you know, there's something there. And, you know, I have over 30 song tracks and mostly original songs on YouTube. And it's very personal, and people, if they want to be mean, they can be very mean. And for some reason, I can handle meanness to my writing more than to my music, I guess.
Right.
And the thing is that once you write something, you're good. With a song, you have to perform it over and over again. You have to get a good take. And if your voice cracks or something, you want to punch a wall. I don't know. There's a lot of things. And a couple of years back, I actually did an event in Puerto Rico where if you want to know what I would like to do in terms of my writing and music, that's what I would like to do. I had all my books. I had my acoustic guitar, I had a microphone, and basically I read from the different books. I had a chat and I played a couple songs, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and it's something that and my brother was like, dude, here's a bottle of wine so you could be like completely bohemian. And I'm like, let's do this. But again, the people who went were like, about 9 or 10 people, and then, two random people that came by into the store, and I'm like, hey, come on over. And I was almost veered into stand up. And I was like, no, don't try too much stuff, buddy. Again, I see the people's reaction to it, but I see that it doesn't, catch wildfire or something like that. And it's always, my question is, what do I have to do to, not for it to go viral, but for 100 people to watch it and not just 80? And then when 100 people watch it, how can I get 200 people to watch it and stuff, so on and so forth. Then I'm going to buy the equipment to do better than that, because basically, this is my equipment. This is my recording equipment. Propping that in a corner, playing songs, hopefully projecting my voice more than the guitar so that it doesn't get drowned out by the music. It's challenging. And again, I'm very self-conscious. And with writing, since I'm not going to be writing live in front of anyone, it's like, oh, yes, I'm going to do this. No. I don't have that issue, because I just have to enjoy the moment, talk, and connect to people. And I'm pretty good at that, because just can't shut the hell up, which is clearly evident.
Well, another one of the things for music with me is that, not only am I not writing any original music, I'm just playing cover songs. It's really, and I started to resume it because I felt that it was something that was missing in my life. It's not necessarily something I do for anyone else at all. It's really about how it makes me feel. And so, like, up here in Washington in the Pacific Northwest in the summer, my friends and my wife and I, we tend to do a lot of camping in the woods. And it's just like we sit around a campfire or stand around a campfire, and we're playing guitar and singing songs. And when we're all singing together, there's something magical about that to me. So I think music for me is deeply personal in that way. And that I don't necessarily feel the need to share my music far and wide, because I'm not making music. Like, I feel like Tom Petty said everything way better than I could ever say it.
Oh, but the thing is that I could say the same thing about Eddie Vedder or Maynard or countless other musicians. But I do think that I have something to say, and I hadn't released a new song in a long time, and this year has been so heavy that that's also a creative route that I've gone to, and it's helped a lot. It's helped a lot to make sense of all the stuff that I see on the news that I'm experiencing and that I'm living.
Right.
And just to channel it. But what gives me trepidation is that it's like, I can do it and people can enjoy it, but there's always that reservation of how much are people responding to me being a nice guy, and how much is it that I have talent? And that's something that I've always struggled with. Because I'm not always a nice guy, by the way. I have my asshole moments. So it's
we all do.
Yeah, but it's that insecurity, and I do what I do just to address insecurities and to not wonder and to not keep it to myself. I don't like keeping stuff. If there's something that I can share and that could give someone the idea to create, I don't want to keep it to myself, and that's a very big driver for me.
Can I ask about your editing process in your novel when you were finished with it? I mean, and this is just relevant to me because I just finished my first novel, and I'm like going back through to edit, and it seems incredibly daunting to me. So like, give me some pointers, give me some help, some insight, and how do I get through editing this stuff to a point where I can be comfortable with submitting it to publishers?
Okay, first off, the process for book 1 and book 2 are very drastically different. And book 3 is also going to be different, but for different reasons. Just more stuff has happened for book 3. Book 1, I wrote the entire thing by hand, and then I transcribed it.
Yikes.
And then I edited it. So transcription and editing took a year.
Okay.
I learned a lot of things that you shouldn't do, and that's one.
Like writing it by hand?
No. Writing it by hand, I still write by hand, but okay. Transcribe it sooner and don't leave that for like one chunk because it's tough.
Right.
It's very tough, and it was very draining. And when you transcribe as you write, for me, you start spotting stuff that you need to tighten already. So just that it's the first editing process, and basically. Another thing is different people work in different ways. I normally write by chapters. I try to finish editing a chapter in a period of time. It could be a day, 3 days, or a week. Try not to be more than a week, because normally my books have a lot of chapters, and it's just for me so that I can organize myself and keep flowing and not dick around. Another thing, if there's a recurring typo, click, Control F and put that typo and see how many times you wrote it.
Right.
That's very, very, very important in the editing process. And find 5 beta readers that will be honest but kind, because or if you need someone to bust your balls, find that. But I need people to be firm, but not be, not punch me when I'm down.
No, I'm with you 100%. That's, I have to, I think, be very selective when it comes to choosing beta readers, because, I 100% don't need people that are going to be like, this is awful, this is terrible, you need to start over, this is just crap, etc. It's like, you're not helping me.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, if I let my mom read it, she's going to be like, this is the greatest thing I've ever read in the history of humankind. And I'm like, you're also not helping me.
Exactly.
So you don't need someone in the middle.
You don't need brass knuckles or pom-poms. You need something more realistic.
Don't need a cheerleader, don't need a hater. I need honest critique.
Right now, a lot of people are getting rejected because if you don't have action and don't get the attention of people on the first page, blah 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 blah. And I get that, but people are getting robbed of the opportunity to build up stuff. Looking for that balance, that's tricky as hell, and I'm not going to say I'm good at that. I think I did better in book 2 than I did in book 1 of the Human Cycle, but it's because I already had book 1.
Right. You already had the foundation to build on.
But it's that pacing and attention spans. You know what? When you're editing, some people are going to tell you to focus in on that. I would tell you to try to strike a balance and just be happy with what you have. Right. They might want you to change that. And I think I felt the need to mention it in case someone says that dick comment. I don't know. I was reading short stories the other day by Lovecraft and by Poe, and it's not like they were in a rush to get to the point, and they're super enjoyable. And I think there's an audience for everything. When you submit, make sure that it's someone that would respect that part of the process.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. Like I don't know what my expectations realistically should be for when I start submitting it. Especially when you hear things like, there are a lot of authors that had things rejected a dozen times that ended up becoming global phenomenons. The previously discussed Harry Potter is such an example.
There's luck in it. And
luck is a tremendous factor.
And that's another thing that people have to remember. In terms of the process, be true to the process, be true to the story, be true to your art, but be very cognizant that you're going to need luck.
I think people overlook luck because they look back at all of the work that they've done and feel like perhaps that they're owed something, or when they achieve some sort of success, they're like, it's because I worked hard. And it's like, no, look, everybody works hard. Like everybody. Like no one's out there not working hard. Like everybody does it. It still takes luck.
Exactly. Or
chance is still a factor.
Chance and just finding the right people, which is in part luck. I've been more fortunate to land on more readers in Puerto Rico recently from markets that I hadn't tapped into because I just hadn't found the means. Right. And by no science, by no method and whatnot, I've stumbled upon this wonderful little community of really nice people that have surprised me in a lot of ways. Is this the thing that's going to make me a writer? I don't know. Might be. Why not? What has changed for you in terms of writing as you get older?
It's a sense of time, like as in I'm running out. So if I'm going to get this shit done, I got to get it done because, the future is not as long as it was when I was younger.
Exactly. You know, basically, if I see the stats of my family, I've already lived half my life, so I got to get
Right.
shit going. Um, beyond that, I just think that the whole writing thing started very inauspiciously, and me being kind of a dick. I was chatting, I was listening to music, I was watching TV, I was doing multitasking and doing a lot of nothing at the same time. And then I saw a commercial for Underworld, and I was like, yeah, I can write something like that.
Right.
And from that, it just continued to morph. And then I took a short story that I wrote when I was 16 or 17, and I used that a scene from that short story as the basis for the human cycle. And then it just evolved, and I got lost in the process. And it's just, embracing the process for each project, coming up with new stuff to keep myself entertained. I think that's always a big thing. It's like, what can I do so that it's still really fun for me? Because there's
Right.
no single story or poem that I go like that I don't just force. I go like, I enjoy doing this, so let's see what happens. And I just embrace the let's see what happens a lot more. And the more I embrace it, the happier I am.
And I think one of the things that I've discovered kind of as I've gotten older is that I was writing a lot in high school and middle school, and even from the time I was very young. Writing has always been something that I've enjoyed doing, but I noticed that it is less egocentric now as I've gotten older. It used to be, writing a character who was, sort of a badass or very, very excellent at a certain thing, like better than anyone else. And it's less about that now, and it's more about just kind of like sorting through my feelings.
Yeah. That for certain projects, yeah. For other stuff, when I write middle grade, I just really, I just turned 40, and I really embrace that joie de vivre that a kid has, and a kid's imagination that
Right.
they don't see a swing set, they see a spaceship.
Right.
And that's something that we should nurture, not let it go because you're mature and whatnot. And for me, it's just that I can tap into different things just because I've experienced more.
Right.
And there's different types of joy. I get an immense amount of joy of eating like a perfect piece of chocolate, but I also get an immense amount of joy drinking wine or eating, like a medium fillet or something like that, and everything in between, and just discovering more stuff. And as I experience more things and taste more, I'm always trying different things. I very rarely do I repeat beers. Very rarely do I repeat ice creams when I can go to an ice cream shop. I describe the process as tapping into different soul wells, and what I tap when I'm writing music and singing is very different from a poem. It's very different from an essay. It's very different from a novel and a short story. Each one responds to different things, and responding to the different things that I need to tap into. Right now I can't do this because it requires too much focus and whatnot, or whatever bullshit excuse I want to find. So I'm gearing towards this because this can give me a half hour where I just fall into flow. And I think that's what a lot of people, don't seem to realize, that it's very, very, very healthy. When you do something and you lose yourself in that, and you're completely flowing, and it's effortless, it's intense, and it's burning a lot of calories. It's got your entire attention to it, but it doesn't feel like a chore. That's the epitome of happiness to me.
Oh, being in flow state?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Flow state is this magical thing but like you said, you have to really effortlessly enter into flow state. Your skill level has to be, high enough that you're not getting in your own way, sort of. It's like I said with the physical conditioning of playing the guitar. Like, my physical conditioning is still getting in my way of really getting in the flow state when it comes to playing guitar. But like with writing, I can generally enter into flow state pretty easily, and with drawing as well. And it is this amazing thing to where when you can dive into that state, time loses all meaning, and you're just there in one moment, making something. And it's like, if if this was all I were ever to do, it would be wonderful.
Oh Lord. I will read this comment as well. Joe said, "I guess I will need to start an indie karaoke show then." No, because I don't perform on the spot. I was gonna be part of an interview, and someone was like, "Yeah, you gotta get your guitar and you gotta sing for me," and I'm like, "No, I don't."